Comrades and fellow South Africans are paying homage today to anti-apartheid struggle veteran Aziz Pahad. He's been described, among other things, as a consummate diplomat and somebody who wanted world peace. In 1991, Pahad was the deputy head of the ANC's Department of International Affairs. It wasn't too surprising when he spent most of his life in government serving the Foreign Affairs Department. He died last night at the age of 82. Just to recall the times and life of Pahad as a diplomat, let's speak to Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, who worked very closely with Pahad over many years. He himself is a former South African ambassador to several places like Portugal and also High Commissioner to Kenya. Good afternoon, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Yeah, it's a sad time, I guess, for the family, the Pahad family. Just a few weeks ago, they said goodbye to Pahad, and now it's Aziz Pahad, and we've had so many tributes being paid. But you worked with him for quite some time as a diplomat. How do you recall him, recall his contribution?
Good afternoon, Braden. Aziz Pahad was a diplomat par excellence. All of us, we joined the new government in 1994. Aziz was a minister. We were in the public service in the Department of Foreign Affairs. But I'd like to recall how Aziz managed the integration of different entities from the Bantu stand, from the apartheid government, and of course a contingent from the Department of International Affairs of the ANC. So he was able to manage the whole process very carefully, but at the same time induce in that a sense of new foreign policy. Of course, working with the entire leadership at that stage, but Aziz Pahad was our point of entry. We knew him. We worked with him in DIA. Now we were with him in the department and developing new policies. And he came up with a lot of initiatives, really, that saw our country taking its space in international affairs. So Aziz was at the center of that. And that's how I like to recall him. As a young diplomat, I got very much inspired by Aziz and really encouraged by him in many respects. And it's a great loss now that Aziz has departed.
What kind of qualities did he possess as a leader in your view? I mean, you were a young diplomat yourself, getting inspired by him.
Aziz was very accessible, not only to us South African diplomats, but even to international diplomats. I mean, later on, I started to more and more really admire the tenacity of how Aziz interfaced with foreign diplomats, always accessible, but very firm in terms of our foreign policy and where we stand, where the country needs to be. He was a great thinker in terms of foreign policy. Aziz was unmatched. He had a very serious passion around conflict resolution in the continent. And that's why if you look at the foreign policy at that stage, you would see there was a lot of emphasis in the resolution of conflict within the continent. And of course, at the time, we were speaking about the Africa Renaissance and so on. And Aziz was at the heart of that in terms of policy development and so on and strategies. We actually used to tease him. We used to call him Suslov. Suslov used to be a senior party member in the Soviet Union and a great thinker, a policy formulator in the Soviet Union. So some of us would nickname Aziz Pahad Suslov because of his passion in the foreign policy development.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something about him being a very consummate diplomat, but you yourself, at some point, you served as an envoy to places like Sudan and Somalia, which are places of conflict. We had Ronnie Kazros earlier in our studio speaking to my colleague Masiho Ratlacha, remembering him as well. But we've had comments like he was a man who wanted world peace. When you were an envoy to those difficult parts of Africa with conflict like in Sudan and Somalia, did you rely on some of the wisdom that you may have gained from your interactions with Aziz?
Well, the skills of interacting with the most vicious people I learned from Aziz. I mean, I remember at one stage, the department sent me to go and negotiate with the warlords in Somalia. And Aziz was the point of contact. I mean, I kept on giving him briefing on daily basis about how the discussions are going, who are the most difficult warlords, and I would really rely on his counsel in terms of how to manage some of those difficult situations. Here I was in a really harm's way, in a serious conflict area, and the only person that I could call around the clock was Aziz Pahad to seek his counsel and his advice, and to be sure that what I was doing there was in line with what the government was expecting, not to make compromises or to make some undertakings that are not in line with government. I always relied on Aziz Pahad. And I knew, speaking to Aziz at any time, I would get good counsel in terms of how to manage the most difficult situation. Even when I was chief of protocol, we would have challenges with diplomats in South Africa relating to a host of other issues. And I really relied so much on Aziz Pahad in terms of his support. And I knew speaking to him would channel things even up to the president. You know, but then we kept on asking ourselves many times, and I learned this later, why is Aziz always a deputy minister? People were promoted, becoming fully fledged cabinet members. Aziz remained a deputy minister. Later on, I learned the importance of change in continuity. That with Aziz at the foreign policy, and the foreign policy being the main strategic area of South Africa at that stage, Aziz was kept there to navigate this turbulent international relations and have some level of continuity. Ministers came and went, and Aziz stayed there, and the policies were really firm. At that time, there was no flip-flop in terms of our policies, brother.
Because he was the constant, so to speak, in that department as the ministers came and went during reshuffles.
Absolutely, and that's why the Department of Foreign Affairs and DECO later kept on having very clean audit because of the political support and not much changes in terms of the political heads. Of course, ministers would come, and ministers who came, they really relied on Aziz because they knew he was a very handy hand in terms of navigating our foreign policy. Very much experienced in many respects, but very humble, very humble. That was Aziz Pahad.
Yeah, any light anecdotes what you recall as you think about him? I mean, you had so many interactions with him. I'm asking this because you said he was approachable, he was accessible, and also we heard earlier Ronnie Caswell saying he was lovable. You know, there was nothing about Aziz that you didn't love.
I actually don't remember Aziz being angry. Even when we realized as technocrats that here we dropped the ball, Aziz will be firm. He will be very firm, but he would really try to help us to navigate whatever challenges we had. So Aziz was very approachable by everyone, even ordinary people on the street. I mean, we would stay till late hours debating a host of issues with Aziz. He really allowed us to express our views in terms of where we wanted the foreign policy of the country to be, what were the challenges and how to navigate those challenges. And because he gave us this space to articulate our views, he was able to guide us and know where we need to be. And we could rely on him, and I know wherever he is, he relied on us.
Yeah, the world is a different place today in 2023. As you and I have spoken quite a lot here about the new world order that's emerging. There's a new bloc that's called BRICS, and I don't think Aziz Pahad was very active in that because, I mean, he became very ill in the latter years before he passed on yesterday. What, in your view, do you think South Africa is going to miss in terms of Aziz now gone as the country navigates new complex and uncertain international diplomatic terrains?
I think we lost Aziz because of our own internal political dynamics. But I think for people like me who kept on really consulting with Aziz on a host of issues, and there's a project that I'm going to undertake, an international project that really looks into the new global order. And I'm going to miss Aziz. I'm going to miss his contribution in terms of where we need to be. I'm going to miss his contribution that I would take to this international platform in terms of this new world order or this multipolar world. I would have loved to sit down with Aziz and really interrogate some of the ideas that I have in terms of how I intend to contribute in that platform. And I'm going to miss Aziz for this, I must say.
Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, thank you very much for sharing some of your recollections of having worked as a young diplomat under Aziz and with Aziz in 1994 as the country became democratic, also paying tribute to Aziz Pahad's contribution. That's Dr. Kingsley Makhubela. He's a former South African ambassador to Portugal and High Commissioner to Kenya, and at some point he was appointed as a special diplomatic envoy to Sudan and Somalia to negotiate with some of the warlords there at a particular moment in our history.